โมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Good evening and blessings to you all. Today is the full moon of March, so as is our custom, the Sangha have come together to hear the recitation of the monks' rules, the Patimokkha, and we also just chanted the Paritas, the verses of protection. Sometimes they call the full moon and new moon days the Dhamma Savana day, meaning Dhamma discussion day. So it's another custom for monks and laity, Sangha and laity, to come together to hear the Dhamma, discuss the Dhamma on these occasions. And we need to be reminded of the teachings constantly through our life, because we forget, we can become careless, heedless, or just lose our way and get caught up in the world. Our teacher Ajahn used to say, the problem is we spend our lives seeking after wealth and pleasure and fame and pleasant experiences all the time. But through our heedlessness, we get attached to them. So when we haven't got what we're seeking, we're unhappy. When we get what we're seeking, we're never quite satisfied with it, and then we are worried we'll lose it. And then eventually, because conditions change, we do lose those experiences. They fade, they change, and we become discontent again. And all of this is because we attach. We attach to the things we want, the pleasures, these pleasant experiences, and the fame and the fortune. I was talking to someone about this today in relation to this very thing we're doing now, having a Zoom session using technology, video technology, which sometimes has its own problems. I think the sound was a bit unsettled earlier. But one of the things people have found with video technology coming in so much because of the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, is that people have started to have to look at their own face a lot more than they used to on screens. If you have a Zoom talk or discussion or seminar, webinar, you're seeing many people's faces, including your own. And many people find this a little bit disconcerting or uncomfortable because they're seeing their face close up, maybe for much longer periods than they used to. I mean, we already spend a lot of time in our lives looking in mirrors. If you add all the time up, it's probably many hours, many days through our life. But still, if you're looking at yourself on a screen as you're talking to others, but your own visual image of your own face is there as well, it can be a little bit off-putting. They say partly because all the blemishes and the aging of your own face is highlighted. Because most people are live streaming or video conferencing from their own home without very good lighting, and they're not particularly wearing makeup like people do on TV or in the movies. So they're facing the stark reality that they're aging every day, and these any kind of video technology seems to highlight that fact. So someone even said they've now introduced a function that you can turn your own image off when you're looking at a screen, so you don't have to see your own face. You don't have to see those wrinkles and the grey hairs or the balding hair or whatever it is, if you just can't stand looking at yourself. And this only highlights what Luang Por Chah was teaching, that we attach to things and then we suffer. So we attach to our physical body. It's probably number one attachment we have. If you're ever wondering why Buddhists talk about attachment, or what they're referring to when they do talk about attachment, well, number one is this body. We attach and identify with our body as a being, a self, me, mine, myself. And of course, we are used to looking at ourselves in mirrors and other reflective things, surfaces, so we get used to the way we look. And if you're looking at yourself regularly through your life, then it's quite natural that you'll miss a lot of the changes going on in your body because you're seeing yourself frequently, whereas someone else who doesn't see you very often might notice what changes occur more clearly, you might see them more clearly. And of course we age, and as we get older, our skin changes, texture and colour and shape changes, our hair changes, our general look changes. As you get very old, you start to sort of stoop a bit, you lose your hair goes grey, your skin becomes wrinkled and so on. Shape changes. So, this is something for us to investigate. Luang Por Chah encouraged us to contemplate this attachment or identification with our body regularly, because it's the basis for a lot of suffering and unhappiness in our life. At the very least, this identification with how we want to look, how we want this body to appear, how we dress it up, how we want to look to other people. And so when it changes in a way that's beyond our control, it shows its impermanent nature, because this body is a collection of natural elements. It can be quite disappointing, distressing, even kind of irritating, annoying, and so on. We all want this body to look good, feel good, be healthy. That's our kind of base or default attachment. And so when it doesn't follow that pattern, or that it doesn't behave in the way we would like, we start to suffer. So the Buddha encouraged us to contemplate this body regularly in light of the three universal characteristics, to see that it's something that's constantly changing according to causes and conditions. It's aging. And because of that, it's dukkha. It's not satisfying because it doesn't stay how we want it to be. It doesn't feel like we want it to feel all the time. We have pleasure and pain. It doesn't look like we would like it to look, and so on. So it's dukkha. And we expend so much energy trying to look after it and keep it in good shape, looking good, feeling good, with nutritious diet and so on. It's very disappointing when it doesn't do what we want. So it's dukkha, the cause of dukkha. And ultimately it's not a self that we can control. It's a something. It's not that this body doesn't exist. It's here, we can feel it, we can see it, but it doesn't go according to our desires. We don't really control it. We have a nominal control over it. We protect it, clothe it, feed it, try and make it comfortable the best we can. But still, we're not able to stop the aging process. We're not able even sometimes to stop it getting ill, sick, or injured. And we certainly can't stop the approach of death, although we would love to not die. Everyone has to face death sooner or later. So it's not a self that in the sense that, it's something you can command and control. If it was a self, you should be able to say, don't get old, don't get sick, don't die on me. But it doesn't respond in that way. We can only do our best just to keep it going as long as possible and minimize the painful experiences. But ultimately we can't control it or stop it from aging, getting sick and dying. So really the teachings of the Buddha and the Four Noble Truths teach about suffering, its cause, the end of suffering, the path that leads to the end of suffering. They all apply to this body. They all arise within this body and our relationship, our mental relationship to the body, how we view it, our attitude towards this body. So as long as we are not very clear, we haven't contemplated, we tend to identify automatically with this body as a self, me, mine, myself. And that feeds endless dissatisfaction and discontent. But we can learn from this. It's those people who gain wisdom and understanding and peace from that in life tend to be the ones who have contemplated their bodies and understood it, their bodies, and seen them as they are. To see the impermanent nature of this physical body, the unsatisfactory nature and the lack of self or selfless nature of this body. And these contemplations and observations bring us wisdom, understanding, and we get peace from that. But it's not something that's very easy, to contemplate the body as it is, as opposed to how we would like it to be. It's not an easy task. If you've ever tried to meditate on the body as a specific task, to direct your attention to contemplate this body in light of the three characteristics, you'll find your mind is very resistant. It doesn't want to contemplate the body. It's too coarse or too gross or just not pleasant for us often, because what we're revealing as we become more mindful and direct our awareness to this body is we're revealing these truths, that it's impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And also we see, when we look at the body more closely, we see the blemishes, the bits that are not very attractive, whether it's on the outside, the more obvious unattractive aspects of the body, or if we contemplate the inner world, the inner area of the body, even more so. It's not attractive. So the human mind doesn't like to do this, if we're honest. And many people try as meditation technique. They calm their mind. Maybe they practice a more tranquilizing, calming kind of meditation first, such as watching the breath, or developing the thought of loving kindness, or recollecting the Buddha. And then the instruction is, well, when you're more calm, your mindfulness is more sustained, your mind is becoming calm in samadhi, and then to contemplate the body. And we find we can do it maybe for a few moments. Some people, maybe a few minutes, or at best, maybe 10 minutes or something. And then we find it's just, we can't stick with it. The mind doesn't want to stay with contemplation of the body. So it's definitely a skill one has to keep developing over time, little by little. It's a meditation and a contemplation to keep growing with, to keep putting effort into, and not to expect quick results. A few people get quick results. Some people use it as their main meditation technique. They're contemplating the 32 parts of the body, directing mindfulness to observe the body both from the outside and the inside. One of the ways we do this is to imagine in our mind's eye, picking each of these 32 parts out and placing them on the floor in front of us, as a visual exercise. So you need a few containers for the liquid parts, the blood, the urine, put them in a bottle or something. And you pile the bones up over here, and the flesh there, and the sinews, and then all the organs, just like if you're in a butcher's shop. And of course, that's not a very attractive proposition. So most people, shrink away just from doing that, even for one moment, let alone for many minutes. So it's something you have to really gently ease into, and maybe it is good to calm your mind first with other meditation techniques. But when you are feeling calm, then experiment like this. The Buddha encouraged us to compare it to some machine. Like in those days, they didn't have cars, but they had chariots. So he said, compare your body to like a chariot. It's got different parts. It's got the base, the wheels, the harness that goes over the horse, say, the reins, the sides, the seat if it has one, and so on. A chariot, just like a modern car, has many component parts. And the human body is the same. It's made up of many component parts, which you can imagine, if you've observed on the internet, different visual images, like anatomy books and so on, you can get a rough visual idea of what the inside of the body looks like. You also know what the outside looks like. And then you can practice just focusing your attention inwardly and doing this mental exercise of placing the body parts out on the floor in front of you. And then contemplating, there's the pile of hair over there, there's some skin here, there's some bones there. And what you're doing is breaking down this automatic identification with the body as a self. Because when you see it more as a pile of different component parts, that normal identification with it as a person, a being, is changing. Your relationship to the body starts to change. You're educating your mind to look at the body in a slightly different way than normal. You could say it's almost like, say, being a surgeon or a doctor in a hospital who would become very familiar with looking at the human body and quite often even opening it up if they're a surgeon. But it's not exactly the same because you're investigating with mindfulness and using the 3 universal characteristics, applying them to each aspect of the body: impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self. So, the visual information, the memories, the perceptions you may have built up through your life from different media and so on, well, they may be quite similar to the kind of images and understanding a doctor would have. But it's more this investigation, looking and asking questions, is this body impermanent? Are each of these different 32 parts permanent, lasting? Are they subject to change? Are they able to sustain us indefinitely and bring us happiness? Are they really a source of happiness, or are they actually unsatisfactory because they don't last and they're subject to aging, sickness? Eventually they fall apart, they stop working, say. And the lack of self, having put all these body parts in front of you in your mind's eye, you're seeing through the sense of it all as being one complete person that's sort of under your control, and saying, well, actually there's a whole bunch of component parts, and the sense of self starts to dissolve maybe as you do this. Of course, you do it once, you may not see any dramatic changes in the way you view this body, but done regularly as a practice, then one's view can change. One is opening up or revealing the truth to one's own mind as one practices this. So it's something that the Buddha encouraged. It's the first foundation of mindfulness. When he taught mindfulness, he directed us to be mindful of the physical form, the body, feelings, the mind itself, and then objects of mind, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and to look at them in the light of these 3 characteristics, and to do this frequently. Practice it a lot, practice it frequently. And particularly with contemplation of the body, you need to do it frequently, but maybe only for short periods of time, because it's so difficult and the mind really doesn't want to look very closely at one's own body. But if you have any familiarity with meditation teachers, particularly sort of the forest monks and nuns of Asia, particularly Thailand, that's my experience. They all emphasize this as a practice to be done, however difficult, however much resistance you have in your mind. It's something that will be very beneficial to you. But it has to be guided with wisdom, mindfulness, and based on a sense of well-being. You have to feel at ease and peaceful and happy in your own mind to be able to stay with the contemplation of the body. Because it's not a very attractive, not a very desirable activity, understandably. And one thing, you're going against, millions of years of evolutionary history. Human beings, we've evolved to this point at this day and age. We have these bodies, we have brains, we have bodies that we can use to do so many things, and we do in this world. We build and develop and understand many great things, and we have great knowledge, and societies have made all kinds of advances. They have done a lot of not so wise things as well, but generally we've had millions of years of evolution to get to this point, all to, for the survival of the species, they would say, for the procreation of the species. We're all here trying to make more human beings and make human beings stronger and better. But with that, a lot of attachment comes. So when you do this practice of contemplation of the body in the Buddhist sense, you're kind of just almost putting a pause on millions of years of evolution. You're contemplating now, seeing the body as a set of component parts made up of basic natural elements from the earth, air, fire, and water, from nature. You're no longer looking at it as something attractive or desirable or the seat, the basis for happiness in life. You're looking at it more in an objective way. You say, actually this body, although it can bring us pleasure, of course, but it's also limited. It's aging, it gets sick, suffers pain, it gets hungry, feels hot, too cold. Doesn't always look so good, doesn't always feel so good. It's got its limitations, and they're being revealed and exposed as you do this meditation. So part of your mind doesn't like it. Part of your mind says, I don't want to do this, it's not pleasant. It's going against, as I said, millions of years of evolution. It's going against the sort of cultural conditioning we have, because as human beings we're being brought up to try and make ourselves look good, feel good all the time. That's a kind of natural conditioning we get from the people around us, the world around us, from the media, from advertising, from other people. And when you start practicing meditation, directing mindfulness to these four foundations of mindfulness, and particularly to the body, you realize how alien it is to do this. You go to school, you go to work, you go out in society, you go shopping, you go here, you go there. No one is encouraging you to contemplate the body or develop mindfulness and wisdom directed to your own body. It's the opposite. They're all the encouragement and all the conditioning we get is to attach to the body and make it look and feel as best we possibly can. And we kind of get sucked into that way of thinking, and so we are often experiencing a lot of suffering based on our relationship between mind and body, and getting upset when it doesn't feel so good or doesn't look so good, getting even depressed, angry, blaming ourselves, blaming others, blaming this, that or the other for something that maybe is just quite a natural experience. The aging of the body is nothing that you can blame on anyone. It's just the way physical bodies behave. They get old every day. The cells are born and then they age and they divide and then they die, and then new cells replace them, but over time, because of the process of temperature and the different processes going on in the body, it's gradually aging. And you can't blame anyone for that. You can't blame yourself, you can't blame the medical profession, you can't blame your parents, you can't blame anyone. You're stuck with a physical body that is aging and is vulnerable to weakness, and weak and vulnerable to sickness, to injury and so on. So the more we investigate this, and we can do it little by little through our life, the more you're coming to terms with the truth, that this thing we call ourselves is actually impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not a self. It's not a being or a person in the sense of something that carries on indefinitely. It's best you could say it's a bundle, a process, and it's a bundle of different component parts that hopefully stay together according to our karma and our merit. They hopefully stay together for a long time so we can use the body to do a lot of good, but destined to get old and fall apart. And nobody wants to think about that. So we're deluding ourselves. We're just hoping that everything hangs together, that if we get ill, we want to get better again, or that we won't get ill in the first place. And we're hoping that aging won't come on very quickly, and so on. But all of this hope is pretty much in vain, and the truths of aging, sickness and death gradually catch up with us. But your true peace is like understanding that, so that your mind is accepting the truth. It knows, that's just the way it is, rather than fighting the aging, sickness and death of the body, accepting this is how it is. And it doesn't mean to say you're trying to hasten aging, sickness and death, and looking forward to it, but you just know this is the way it is. And contemplating the body regularly will help you bring your mind and your thinking in line with this truth. I always remember Luang Por Chah's last teaching to his own mother, who became a nun living in his monastery. And he obviously wanted to give her a gift of Dhamma before she passed away, something to settle her mind, because she was ill and dying. And he gave her the last teaching and said, just let go of your body. This body is not you, it's not yours. It's a sankhara, it's a karmic formation, physical karmic formation, and it's something you can't control, so just let it go. And letting go of the body doesn't mean to say you don't look after it, but it means mentally you're relinquishing that attachment, the desire based on the body, the identification with the body, and the attachment to the body. This is a mental thing. The letting go it's coming from seeing it is something you have to let go of because you can't control it. And if you've been, identifying or attaching strongly to your body, then you'll have had a lot of suffering from that. It's like a burden, isn't it? You're trying to keep it going, keep it healthy, keep it young, strong, etc. That can be quite burdensome on the mind because you're sort of failing at it half the time. When you realize you can let the body go, it can be a great relief to the mind. The mind can experience a lot of piti and sukha, rapture, happiness, because you're now focusing on the mind and training the mind with mindfulness and wisdom, rather than always clinging to the body with a sort of vain hope that it will somehow pull through and live forever. So this was the teaching he gave to his mother, to let go of the body and keep the mind in a wholesome, peaceful state, which would be the best way to prepare for the onset of death. Keep your mind in a calm, wholesome state. Understand that this body is something to be let go of because it's impermanent. We don't have to start that practice at the end of our life. We can begin right now, today. Every day you have the opportunity as you go through your life to contemplate, to become aware of the limitations of the body, just so you're learning the way things are, understanding the way things are. It's not to bring a new attitude of revulsion to the body, or hating the body, or going to one extreme from one extreme to another. You either love your body or you hate it. It's not that. It's just to be mindfully aware of the way it is, so that it doesn't catch you out when change comes, when sickness comes, when aches and pains come, when you're observing the aging of your own body. You're not being caught out. You just know this is the way it is. You can observe in other people around you. There's always someone around who's older than you. You can observe young people getting older. You can observe old people and some of the experiences they're having. And then you bring this contemplation back to yourself. And you don't have to sit with your eyes closed in a meditation posture to do this. It can be simply observing the way things are from day to day, observing the changes in your own body, observing some of the dukkha, the difficulties of the body, and what it brings you. Sometimes it brings you pain, discomfort. Just observing that so that you're familiar with the truth of this body, and you're seeing it with a sense of separation between the mind that knows and then the body as an object. And this is where a lot of peace will come in your life, where you recognize, this body is ultimately not to be grasped at as self. It's a collection of natural elements that, I'm going to keep going the best I can, but I'm not going to cling on blindly to it, expecting things that are impossible from it. So you can do this every day, just observing the changes in your body. Painful feelings arise that you can't do anything about. Sometimes you just observe that, that's the way it is. Sometimes pain comes, sometimes we get pleasure, sometimes we get pain. But these things are impermanent, they're not self. They arise, they pass away. Who is it that does that? Well, it's the mind, isn't it? We're training the mind with mindfulness to investigate the truth, look back at itself, look back at this body, which is like the vehicle, isn't it? The mind is like the passenger, the body is like the vehicle. So it's the passenger looking at the body, like you sitting in a car and looking at the car that you're sitting in and saying, this car is useful, it can take me around to places. But every year it's getting a bit more worn out, rusty. Sometimes we get bumps and scratches. And we know ultimately one day the engine will stop working for one reason or another. So in the same way as you might look at your car, then you look at this body. It's the mind that you're training in the Dhamma with mindfulness, with wisdom, that sees this, understands these truths. And then there's the letting go. It's like knowing, no, this is the way it is. The body is just a body. However beautiful or ugly it is, however much you like it or dislike the way your body looks, feels, it's just a body. It's just a collection of elements. And the more you can be at peace with that truth, you can go through life with a great sense of ease. You're not too afraid of what might happen to this body because you know it's not yours anyway. You're not too uptight. You're not too attached to it. When it doesn't look so good, it doesn't bother you so much. If it looks nice, good. If it doesn't, never mind. It's just a vehicle that you can use for doing good in this world, for helping other people, for helping yourself with your own practice. But in the end, it's something to be abandoned, to be let go of. And when we leave this world, at the end of our life, what are we doing? We're leaving this body because it doesn't work anymore. We're letting it go back to the elements. And someone today was asking, what's better when you die, to be cremated or to bury? In the end, it doesn't really matter, does it? Once you're dead, you don't know. But if you cremate this body, then it just becomes ashes, which can be buried somewhere or just scattered in the forest or in the ocean. If you bury it, you bury the body, you can bury it at the foot of a tree or in a graveyard somewhere, well, it will go back to the earth as well. Doesn't really matter, does it, what way you treat the body after it's dead. It must just go back to the elements, because that's what it does. The mind is the thing that knows that. And in Buddhism we say, well, consciousness, if it hasn't reached Nibbana yet, there's still karma affecting it, well, it will go on to a new life. And you don't take your body with you, you let it go. So practice that letting go right now while you're still healthy and able to contemplate, because this is allowing yourself a lot of freedom, peace in your mind. The other extreme is, to cling on to your body, try and keep it going as long as possible, and often that can bring you a lot of unnecessary suffering, disappointment. In the time of the Buddha, there was a story of a guy who his wife died, and he loved her so much, but he loved her, and then he kept the body after she was dead. So the body decomposed until it was just a skeleton, and he refused to bury her or cremate her. He just kept the skeleton in his room, and every day he keeps looking at the skeleton, sort of remembering his loved one, his wife. It's probably pretty gruesome by these days' standards, but that was based on his attachment. He wouldn't give up the skeleton because that was the last thing that reminded him of his wife. But a skeleton in the end is just a skeleton. It's just bones that go back to the elements. The wife is not really the skeleton. The wife is all the good that she did in her life that he can remember. That's any human being. The sum of our life is not really the physical body, which inevitably will disappoint us, get old, sick and die. But it's the karma, the good karma we make through our life is what we want to celebrate, remember, develop, cultivate, do more good. And then when we pass away, if anyone's remembering us, they can remember the good we've done. That can maybe be an inspiration or a source of happiness for our family or friends, people who know us. But the body is nothing, is it? You can't do much with a physical body. Once it's gone, it's gone. Best just to let it go. So tonight I've just been talking a bit about contemplation of the body. It's a subject, a topic that you don't hear about that much, even in Buddhist circles, meditation circles. People are a little reluctant to bring it up as a theme for contemplation, understandably, because you're going right to the heart of your attachment, and part of the mind resists that. It just doesn't want to look, doesn't want to go there, which is entirely understandable, but very valuable if you're brave enough and willing to have a go, to take the time to contemplate your own body using the Buddhist teachings on impermanence, unsatisfactory and not self as a guide. This is something that can really bring you some deep inner peace and understanding, and it kind of helps you to release your mind from a lot of this sort of automatic or blind attachment and identification with the body, which brings us so much suffering. So for tonight, I'll just say this much and wish you all success in your Dhamma practice.